It's been a long time since I've been there for a visit, so I'm very pleased personally, and we're also very pleased to be part of the CNIE network in this presentation. So one might normally ask, what is this all about? And as you might guess, it has to do with creative thinking and getting out of the box. So that shouldn't be too surprising. Now let's dive right in and look at these two images, both of which are deemed somehow to be creative. And the question that we're going to ask you, and you can actually, if you like, you can respond directly with your microphone since we're a small group, or write in the chat box as you prefer. The question is, if you were a museum curator, which of these would you choose for your exhibit and why?
It is a real question.
Yeah.
So it's going to be the one on the right? The face, because it has to be the face, because you don't expect a face to be made out of vegetables.
Well, that's a good, nice answer. Somebody else had the same thing or different?
So
completely out of
Helen
my
says,
depth here. So
I would probably pick number 2 because it is not usually presented this way. So similar to Stephen's answer.
Good.
And Eric also says the one on the right. So everybody seems to agree that the face is the one that would go into a museum. John says, if it was an edible exhibit, I would go with number 1. Okay, John, you want to tell us why?
I think, I mean, yeah, I agree if it was on display, having the face like representing something in a way that you wouldn't expect it to be represented. Then if you're just looking at it or talking about it, that's what I would go with. But if it was, I guess like a culinary exhibit where it's like, okay, get your hands in here and try out things, I would be much more sort of into the one on the left, where I could sort of choose what flavors would go with each other and just sort of make a flavor combo of my choosing, as opposed to something a bit scarier that's already been represented and in a human form, right? Yeah.
So you would want to eat it.
I wouldn't want to eat number 2, yeah. But I think,
yeah.
I guess thinking of the different modes of exhibits and the way that you're interacting with it, I think is important to think about.
Yes, it might depend on the museum, somebody said. Yeah, it's true. In fact, it might depend on the context. Sometimes it might depend on the intention you have when you expose it or show that, and exactly what you want to expect from the audience. Because it's not just the objective, the object itself, it's about how we interact with the object, how we interact with the context, environment, and how we interact with people around, with the rest of society, about our own image, about their expectations, about what is an added value, and everything that enters in the social dynamics where we are just immersed. It's not just the object, it's something else.
So among the various definitions of creativity, pretty much everyone agrees that one component, it's not the only thing necessary, but one component is that somehow you break the existing paradigm. And I think we can say that of the two images, the one on the right breaks the existing paradigm, whereas the one on the left more or less conforms to it. And what this workshop is about is how we can use that essence of creativity and changing paradigms in order to reinforce benefits that we can get from AI learning, and at the same time try to put a brake on some of the pitfalls or dangers that can come out of it. So this is our agenda for the hour. We start with the role of artificial intelligence as an educational agent. Then we'll have a little discussion amongst ourselves about human-machine interaction and looking at it as possibly a new element in diversity. Then we'll talk about creativity and its relationship to the digital bubble, about which more later, and have a discussion at the end about how creativity can contribute to social evolution in an AI-driven environment. So that's our schedule. And there is a hashtag for the conference, CNIE 2021, which you can use. And you see also on the screen our Twitter identities if you care to tweet anything about this at some point. So let's get going and let's look at what at least we think is the correct role for AI-based education in a society which I think we can pretty well assume is getting more and more hybridized and depending more and more on human-machine technology.
In fact, it's a lot about how we integrate technology in the core skills we usually have. And sometimes we think about the educational agents now with the artificial intelligence, and we think that education has changed a lot because they didn't have it before. But if we compare about what happened 40 years ago, maybe we have to say that spaces are not so different if we just think of schools. They are different because we've expanded the space into the transmedia universe, into something dematerialized, into something which is absolutely abstract and intangible. And sometimes we would say some of the skills we are today using in the school, in our curricula, probably are similar to the ones they had to work with. They learn how to drive, to draw, to write, to read. And probably it's true, some of the skills are the same, but we've changed those skills because we've implemented the idea of essential basic skills for everybody. And that idea of collectivity, of inclusion, it really a change. And maybe what's the big paradigm is that the roles seem to be the same in the sense that the teacher is the one that is the authority or is the master in something. But the and the student is, originally they said the recipients or the students who had to train, but now we are demanding from the teachers as much learning as we are demanding from the students, because the situation is absolutely different for everybody. One thing that is really true is that we've been evolving in those curricular paradigms from knowledge building into community building. They were very aware 2,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 500 years ago, that they needed something to improve society, which were connected to knowing more about the tools, the resources, the strategies. Now we know that it's more related to how we build society, how we create and mediate with others to create a new global planet, global society, global history. That's why we could say that the evolution of learning, I have the, okay, here. The evolution of learning is moving into the intangibles of social dynamics, not just technological mechanics. So we are really moving into something more abstract and also deeper in the human sense of evolution, because when we are just talking about new resources, new technologies, our skills, our core skills really change. We need to adapt because the other ones just become obsolete. They are not just connected to the epistemologic or the epistemic components. It's not just about the domain of knowledge or about the resources we use, the techniques, how to master the tools. It's more about how we relate not only to the tools, but to each other. So we are into what some people call soft skills, other social capital, other whatever dynamic you could display. I like the list of skills that Marope and her team provided in 2018 for UNESCO, which were which were a list of skills connected to technology and core basic literacies, but at the same time we are connected to emotions and obviously connectivism. I was thrilled to know that Stephen Knowles was here. Actually, thank you very much. I'm really impressed. But it's true. I mean, it's connected about to how we learn and why we learn. So the important thing is how technology changes, and then our skills needed to change too. We just summarized that in last intervention yesterday here. But it's important to see that we have to see those skills as something very recursive, something even fractal, in the sense that we really develop self-knowledge in a strategical sense, in the strategical sense and in the sense of basic skills, but we also relate to each other, and we have to really create that expectations to mediate with the discipline we want to study and also with the people we have to use discipline to. And obviously that implies changes in the ethical dynamic of society, something which is projective, out and far away from what we're studying now. That is exactly what we see in our classes, which are quite different from the ones we've seen in the Egyptian representation. We have here, for instance, a situation where the teacher is in the picture or not, but they are facing each other and they are interacting, and that's different. Social, cultural, and communicative abilities are becoming part of a core skills. I really recommend the Marope list of creative skills, social skills, and technological skills. So it's really important in that sense. And that helps us to mobilize the epistemic learning, the knowledge building paradigm also, changing at the same time the content, the strategies, and the social environment that goes together with it.
One of the things that I think we can say, or at least that we are foreseeing, is that in this development of social skills, there are going to be artificial intelligence agents that are also going to be asking for their place at the table. And what we are seeing today in what is often called smart pedagogy is that we have some sort of machine learning that is powering various tools. And when we talk about machine learning, we're talking about something which is data-driven. It's driven by big data. And what that means is that when we look at things like highly personalized learning materials or control of the learner's personal environment, physical environment, and other, say, more socially organized spaces or social contexts. And the smart learning space there, by the way, is from Queen's University, just out of interest. But when we see these, we have to remember that when we talk about data-driven AI, it's largely based on extremely sophisticated statistical analysis. What we mean by that is that it is always looking backward. It's looking at what has happened in the past and tries to predict the future based on that. And this is very important because it can never ask, what if? And so we have a possibility of creating what is often known as a digital bubble or some sort of cocoon around a learner, which can feel good, but might also be dangerous. And we'll talk more about that a little bit later. Meanwhile, we are also developing a common code, which we use to communicate in just about every domain, and that is the binary code of 0 and 1. So if you look at this table here, what you see is a process that one type of machine learning program can use, where it takes an image, in this case, an image of Neos's face, and it decides, first of all, that it is a face and a woman's face, then starts to examine the details of that face and try to work out who is it. Finally, it also has the ability to output text that says this is a woman's face, and then convert it to a synthesized voice and put out speech. And then another algorithm can take that and translate it. In this case, we've used Catalan as the example, and start to make associations that we would describe as cultural relevance, having cultural relevance and having cultural meaning. Of course, for the machine learning program, it's simply an association. It does, the machine learning program knows nothing about culture, but it can produce information that we would consider culturally relevant. So this is a process that integrates certain kinds of literacies, that works with meaning and pulls them all together. And this is one of the powerful aspects of artificial intelligence and AI-based learning. But we also need to remember in any pedagogical system that there's a lot that you don't see that is very important. For example, in this picture, the teacher is not physically present, but obviously the teacher is somehow involved. There's also, of course, all the lesson planning, all the logistical organization, the institutional organization, and all the rest of it. But there's even more than that, because if you project the future of these kids in this picture, there are many things that might affect how their future evolves that may or may not have to do with artificial intelligence, or even what we do in the school on any level. Like, are they able to get a bank loan to buy a house or to do higher studies? Will they get access to a museum where they need to do research? You know, the digital bubble question again. Do they need a drone pilot's license to do something? Can they get access to medical school? And some of these are based on biases. For example, we know that there was recently a case in Japan where there was a bit of a scandal because women were systematically excluded as applicants to medical school due to, in fact, an artificial intelligence algorithm. So these are all things that we need to pay attention to and that are very important, because as we get deeper and deeper integration of AI into all aspects of life, not only education, we find that it learns about our context and it learns about our private feelings. So it can use big data from context sensing and get very, very detailed information. For example, if you've ever looked at your Google timeline, it's kind of scary how much it knows about where you've been, what places you've stopped at, and so on. But this is something that we allow it to do. But it can also look at faces, and this, you may think this comes from China's new facial recognition social experiment, but in fact, it's a pedagogical experiment in which a Japanese professor actually used facial recognition to estimate how engaged his students were in distance education when he was presenting webinars. So this is not the same thing as the Google timeline. We agree to the Google timeline. This is done sometimes without our knowledge or permission. And that also raises a whole lot of other questions.
And it's connected to some you showed just before, because the basic competences, the results, the PISA results that we have now, they are there out in archives, and we don't know if they are going to be used in banking to make decisions on their future loans. And we don't know if the information that we provide now through our acts are going to be meaningful for asking permission to go to visit one country or another according to what we've been doing as kids or in a school. That idea of future, depending on what happens now, and being part of this big data is what really can scare a lot of people.
So we're going to do an activity now, and it's dealing with interaction and interacting with artificial intelligence. I hope you all have a mobile phone or a laptop somewhere to hand. And what we're going to do is use an application which you may already know, in fact, because it's been quite popular, called Reface. On the next page, you'll get a set of instructions, and you might want to take a screenshot.
I was just going to read some of the, well,
Yeah, go ahead.
Because here they are also people asking or saying that augment is essential. AI doesn't have access to background knowledge or context. That's true. But it is done without knowledge or permission, exactly what we were saying about human as well. So when I read the room, that's okay. Right, people answer and was in agreement. I think it's also true that sometimes we collect information thinking that it's going to be for a specific purpose, and we don't know what's the purpose in the future. Maybe if we have certain medical records, we are not going to be allowed to have drone in Mars, and I would love to drive one there because it's something that they've experimented just 2 days ago. So sometimes even things that are connected to healthcare or to education or to self-protection might end up being part of our bubble in decision making that is done in different spaces, not in our own life. That's really a problem.
All right, so we're going to ask you now to download the Reface app, if you don't already have it, from either the iOS App Store or the Google Play Store. It is free. When you download it, by the way, you'll get a screen that makes it look like you need to do some sort of free trial for 3 days, and then they'll charge you. You'll see a little X in the upper left-hand corner. Just tap on that and it'll go away. You do not have to sign up for that, and don't get fooled. And we're going to ask you to do something once you've got it downloaded. You can see on the screen that I've done one for myself. I always wanted to be Clint Eastwood in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. So there I am.
So try to choose one image or video. Just put yourself a protagonist and be brave and share it with us.
And as you do that, think about how you've done it, and especially what are the consequences of having done it. So we'll just give you a few minutes to do that. When somebody's got something done and wants to make a comment, feel free to just open your mic or put something in the chat box. Yes, please do share. We would love to have you share.
Do you want to stop this for them to do? I think you can just show it through your...
Yeah, if you can just show us your phone on your camera.
We see only 2, 3 people now. 3 people. Okay.
All right.
Nicholas?
I don't know if you can see me. I'll just hold up my phone. And so this is
me. Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Me with my shirt off. That's my old 50-year-old face on a very young body. So hooray for me.
Hi. That's great.
Stephen's got one.
Oh, wow.
It's the
same one. That's an ethos.
Wow. Oh, that's wonderful.
You've chosen the same one. Great. Some psychologists should analyze that.
It's a male fantasy of youth and vigor.
Yeah. Anyone else care to share? Or just to comment even on the experience? And especially thinking about what are the consequences of doing something like this?
Yeah. This is the hidden curricula. We were talking about how we do it, and that's the explicit curricula. Okay. I stopped installing that. I was reading that they will take your image and basically make your face irrecoverable, royalties free. Yeah, they said that. Yeah, look,
Oh, there's
good.
another one. Stephen's got another one.
Yeah. Yeah, they already have that. I have to say, Erika, they already have that just by being in a conference. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's true. They give you this information, but it's so small, so hidden that really you don't have access to your self-protection skills.
There is actually a whole branch of law practice now, which is
Oh, good. That's experimenting.
yes.
Self-identities in multiple environments. Thank you.
There is a whole branch of law now involved in aspects of artificial intelligence and ethics, and the whole question of the EULA, the electronic license, is a big one that's being studied. I know people who are working on this and working very seriously on it. It's not a subject we have a whole lot of time to explore in this session, but it is a very serious one. So would anybody care to comment on this question about consequences, and also how you might be able to use this with your students? There's a comment in the chat box.
Yeah, Erika mentioned that, the property. But by the way, it's different in different continents also, because there are different consequences of using self-image there. But I think it's also important to notice how easy it has been just to upload your picture in there. And it was your picture, but now we could really change the paradigm.
Yeah, we could indeed. So anyone else care to comment before we move on?
Okay.
If not, the next thing that we would do, oh, there are some comments coming up. Can you read them, please?
Yeah, I think a company could and would take control of your image with or without license. Yeah, they do it. So that's what I said.
Yeah.
I enjoyed playing.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was a fun one. Okay, but it's true. You can choose now another one. We can put this as an exercise. In fact, Ray did that.
Yeah, I did it for Neos.
I didn't like it.
So the question, in fact, that comes up is, if you do that, is this a legal question or an ethical question? We could even say, is it a pedagogical question? And I think we'll use that as the sort of kicker to get into our first discussion on human-machine interaction. And in order to trigger some thoughts, we need to be aware that one of the things that artificial intelligence is doing is creating a hybrid human-machine society in which we interact with machines indifferently, that is, in the same way that we would with humans. It's not that we don't know they're machines, it's just that we don't care. So we talk happily with Alexa, with OK Google, Siri, etc. We have no problem doing that. And that's going to be more and more of our daily life. So here are 4 indicators of possible stimuli for discussion. And I would ask you if to kind of chime in, try to, let's see if we can get some debate going on any one of these subjects that you see on the screen, or any other subject related to how we interact with machines and how we're going to interact with machines.
Can you come up with an opportunity and a danger for everyone? Go ahead. Helen, I didn't hear your voice there. Yama, Nadine, happy to see you here again. So one of each, opportunities and dangers.
So, I mean, there's all kinds of opportunities and all kinds of dangers, and I'm not really going to try to pick one. You know, I thought about this a lot. and I'm sort of stuck on the, you asked earlier, is this a legal question, an ethical question? And, I mean, there are cases where it's going to be, but I think we need to back up a bit, especially when we talk about ethical questions, because, it's not like we've solved ethics. It's not like we have a single universal definition of what is ethical and what is not ethical. And even if we did, why we should follow that definition. So, you can't simply apply ethics to AI. So that's one thing. The second thing is, we find, we these days, we're finding problems with all kinds of things that an AI might do that humans do all the time. And I put a few in the chat, right? Like I talk with my cats all the time. Cats aren't human. I know this. Cats don't understand what I'm saying. At best, they're responding to tone, if they're responding at all, and that's questionable. I think mostly they respond to tuna. But so what? Similarly, I'm sitting here. I noticed that Daph's going like that, and so I'm projecting emotions onto her, which may or may not be accurate. They're probably inaccurate. Similarly, Nick's sitting over there sternly judging me. Right? I'm projecting emotions onto him. I do that all the time. So who cares if a machine does it? So to me, when you come out the other end, it's less a question to me of ethics or law and more a question of niceness. Is it, you asked, and I wouldn't actually put a friend's face into Reface because I wouldn't do that, right? Not because it's unethical or it's wrong or illegal, but, I probably wouldn't want it done to me, maybe. Even if I did, who cares? Right? I just don't want to put them in that position. So to me, that's the first instinct. And I think the appeals to ethics and the appeals to laws are really there for the people who are looking for loopholes, looking for ways to not be nice. And if you can say, oh yeah, no, but it's ethical or it's legal, then I can do it, but I don't see it that way. I know that's just me.
I hope I don't look
It's interesting.
disturbed. I was just listening. Can I jump in? Can I jump in with number 3?
Sure.
I think it's kind of. So I'm a teacher. I drive an old 2007 Honda Element. It's nothing fancy. But when I went to visit my brother in California, I rented a car that you could put on cruise control, and it had a proximity detector. It could tell
adaptive cruise control.
Yeah,
I love that.
In front of me, and it was able to respond faster than I could, and I like that very much. I think we can all be distracted by the kids in the back seat, and it's good to have an automated intelligence looking out for us or for the car. I mean, I don't want to pay an insurance premium, if I break it.
Actually, I get an insurance discount because I have it on my car, and I get a discount because of it.
But the point also of that illustration is that although most experts agree that planes are safer when they're flown by automation than when they're flown by humans, probably no AI would ever have made the decision that Captain Sully did to land a plane on the Hudson River.
Right.
And
that's risk taking.
And AI is singularly not good at dealing with the unexpected.
Given the choices that Sully had, given the choices that Sully had, what would the AI have done instead? Simply crashed it into the ground? No, probably not.
It probably would have attempted to return to the airport.
But it knows it can't. Not an option.
Not the others.
So Yvonne has been putting some interesting questions in the chat. Can you read them? You're a little closer to it.
Are they going to lose control one day and lose some of our skills. Oh, we can talk about it later. There is a second part to this.
Yes.
Thank you, Yama. And that idea of what's going to happen if we are going to lose control or we are just going to be blending with AI in a way or another. That's part of what's about. I mean, when UNESCO decided that in 2045, the main issue won't be like in 2030 sustainability or sustainable development, but human heritage. They are asking, what does it mean to be human? Is human to have glasses, to have an implant? Is human to be half brain machinery? Is human to depend on artificial intelligence to take any decision or every decision? So that's something we are going to debate this century. We've started in a path that nobody has done before, because technology has a different meaning now. So that's the idea of hybrid human-machine interaction or hybrid human being. Here, for instance, the art and culture image is not just somebody having a sort of false implant. It's something that actually reproduces the idea of recording information. So these technologies are going to be not just exotic artistical manifestations, but they are going to belong and be part of our creative way of dealing with education, healthcare, traffic, profession, or transports.
Yes, Erica made a comment in the chat about the relationship of AI to certain prostheses or dealing with physical disabilities.
Yeah, we have some already webinars for Adobe talking about prostheses and how this is related to the concept of technology and the caring we have for ourselves and the environment. Alexa says, we asked Alexa a question during our dinner conversation with the kids. Yeah, of course, it's an extra person in that sense.
Yeah.
And that's part of what, me too, says that. That's part of what we are going to start talking about. And we don't have a lot of time. We are going to run to the second part, just running aside. Because we are going to talk about how we deal with this bubble, how this bubble is really building already. Is being built in our educational environments and how we can deal with that. So first of all is a quick definition of it. The digital bubble can be understood as the limited space, the controlled environment where the learning process takes place. And it's there where the students are going to develop their skills and values. So it's important to understand that it's not just the physical space, it's that cultural and social space where they are immersed all the time. And that's maybe the first concept, because we can say, okay, it's a personalized bubble, but it's built according to their needs. So we can consider that it is a safe space. And we can say, okay, we put artificial intelligence because it's a way of controlling that nothing is happening inside our platforms of communication, or we can use it because then it helps the student to have the best color on the screen, or the best tune of voice according to their personal needs, physical or psychological. So we can consider that it is positive because we create a space. But the space itself can become a danger, because sometimes this space can become a sort of digital guided cage, the gold cage for
gilded cage. That's actually a spelling error on my part.
Gold for because of it's just personal, but it's also cultural. We have very fast activity. Just look for how and why we need to identify those social bubbles. Go to the next one. Here you have, okay, can somebody tell me what is this picture about? One concern we have is when the kids are rude to Alexa. Yes, because they can be rude to any person, to their next girlfriend, yeah, to the mother or her wife. So it's true, they acquire a behavior, which is skill. But just answering about this, just with voice or writing on the chat, what is this picture about? Somebody is saying paper dolls. That's good. Okay, another one, Little Red Riding Hood. Last one, now another one we can say.
Another Little Red Riding Hood.
Okay, take this one. We are talking about storytelling. Yeah, we're talking about something which is absolutely culturally driven. It's according to the Occidental literature, the oral literature, something you acquire in family, even paper dolls. Well, if you've cut them out and played with that, yes, you know what it is. Somewhere else, maybe it's not so clear, because those family behaviors, those school skills or activities help us to have our safe, protective cultural environment, which they are, yes, horror movie, I agree with that. They are also projecting our lifelong learning environments. We have here personalized spaces, academic literacies, professional skills, cultural ethos, even likes and dislikes on movies. So you are disclosing a lot just by choosing the meaning of a particular issue. And when we talk about how these social bubbles are really growing around us, it's easy to know that it's not just the family or the environment. It's also the parents, the educators. It's the way the whole society is developing the child. So those bubbles are created by a common tribe. And we are reproducing a lot of what we consider proper. So we might not be in agreement what's ethical or moral, but we agree on how we want to educate our child. But then we find that every family can have different opinions. Every culture can have different opinions. And we really start seeing that even if it is safe, we have many of them. So maybe safe is not a pure concept. And it's important to see that we have to break those bubbles, because otherwise we will have a lot of atomized opinions or singularities, but we won't be able to work together. And we will end up being in a sort of a black hole horizon where we can't see what's farther from our own bubble. And we live in isolation. Well, we don't need to talk about politics because both North America and Catalonia had their own issues with that, but being in bubbles are really something that we care about. And it had happened always, but now with artificial intelligence is going to be globalized. I would like to tell you 3 stories, because what happened in these 3 stories, which are from the past, are going to happen in the future. And it's important to just point out at them. I like this one. It's about errors in planning. What we had in Barcelona 2004 was a forum, something like, a big event, economical event for us. So they started to put those covers for the
manholes.
And they had to change it immediately. They received so many complaints and denounces that they changed it with those ones. You might say, okay, they didn't like it square, so they put it round. Well, there was something else. Just to give a clue, this picture gives you the idea of what happened with the others. If they were moved by the car or if they were moved by something, they just slipped inside the hole because the lateral part might be fixed, but the diagonal hole becomes bigger. So the bad design was something that they needed to change. How we would change it? Well, we would include diverse profiles. We need to incorporate users. We need to really ask people who had to park on those streets, because the bubble of the designer is a different one. It's professional bubble, which really affects how the user is going to use that. We need to incorporate somebody which is participant. Well, every enterprise knows that. And the user approach is part of what we also have in pedagogy now. The pedagogical approach is including the student in the center, their opinions count, and so on. Second story, we have here a communication story which is very simple. How many times can you subtract 3 from 25? Answers?
You won't like my answer, but an infinite number of times.
You say in infinite numbers,
Yes.
and you are not going to give it with Duff. I think Duff said,
Yeah, and watch me. 25 minus 3 is 22. 25
that's
minus 3 is 22. 25 minus 3 is 22.
that's lovely. Yeah, you just subtracted once, but you did an iteration of the communication part. One is the qualia of the action of subtracting. The other is the quantum of your communication issues, which is not the same. But okay, we can accept that. I like it. But there is a difference here between the qualia of action and the quantum of communication, two different registers. Well, but that's something that we have in education a lot of times. We can see this, and the question, I love it. They say, where is X? Find X. The answer is very simple. I mean, it's here, okay? And what's not logical is the answer of the teacher. It's a 0. It's a failure. Come on, they found it. Well, I like those literal answers because they exist. Yeah. And it's part of what we find every day in the school, different levels of abstraction. So the problem would be those mistakes of using different codes to express, like Stephen using their own with infinitum when if we are the communication branches or disciplines work in a different register, well, we need common core. So what's the suggestion? The suggestion might be have feedback. Somebody said it in the chat. I think Stephen said we need feedback, and that's true. That's how we measure the error. We need the feedback for understanding, feedback for being sure of it, and feedback for following after. Just listen to the third one, which is also interesting. The first time they started to use X-ray in United States, everybody expected to have an improvement in health. In fact, they had a lot of dead people. And if you follow the curve, they started to really have problems. One might think that it's because of the radiation, lack of protection, and not really knowing the product itself or the tool itself. Well, it's not. That's not the reason. Because the problem was in the doctor's training. The way the doctors were trained to discover and know how the heart is shaped or how the stomach should be installed or located in the body is on a flat table. And the organs in a flat table had absolutely different shapes. So the first time they started to see them hanging inside the body, they started to think that they were rotten. They had problems. They had to be cut down or operated. So they started to die because of perioperative situations in health. So the previous knowledge was wrong. The skills were obsolete. And they started to do massive training for images according to the technology. And that was the solution. So we also need to understand that if we keep adding artificial intelligence in banks, healthcare, education, without teaching what's the essence of the data where it's built, or how the error is understood as a progression and an element which is needed, we are going to have those problems too, mismatching with the real needs of education.
And with that in mind, when we think about breaking out of the digital bubble, so we need to think, what are the tools that we have available? Obviously, lateral thinking would be one, getting some independent decision-making capabilities, but also social interactions, aggregation, exchange, etc. And what you see is these two groups of arrows. One represents individual acquisitions that are necessary, and the other is social, and we need both of them, and it needs to be vectored by creative practice, and that can be practiced with technology, that can be practiced in mixed systems where we might or might not have technology, but above all, it needs to be shared with other learners. So what we see is that in various kinds of situations, we can use this kind of collective interaction to break the bubble that can be created when working with an AI-driven learning environment, which tends to cocoon us and to isolate us. So even if we've all got a lot of individual experiences, when we start sharing them, they're different, and we start to understand other people's points of view. And this can be in formal or non-formal settings. It can be intergenerational, intercultural. There's a whole variety of ways that we can get this, because we need to actually focus on the student rather than the technology. And we all know that learning happens in context. So if you look at this photo, we might ask, all right, what is the actual subject of this photo? Anyone?
Movement? Is it movement? I mean, it's a person in motion.
Well, that could be, yeah.
I'm going with the bridge because it's
Yeah,
static.
That's very explicit.
That's what I went with too, was the bridge. So again, we're looking at the context, and there are a couple of comments about that the subject is actually photography or the quality of the camera.
Wow,
Well,
I think you have three levels here. One is the component, is Stephen. Another one is the strategy. It's obvious that you're a teacher, so Nicholas. And the third one is, which is outside the situation, you have people that probably are involved in designing. So the importance of changing the focus is also necessary to change an experience with creativity. That's part of what we're going to do. Maybe we won't have a lot of time because we are now advised that we really have to go through, but we leave the activity here just to experiment with it, because it's another tool that it's really important to know. It really helps us to share and interact with the rest of the world, opening our bubble, trying to discover different ways of doing. Take a screenshot of the next instructions if you want. We're going to use Google Trend. Well, if we don't have the time, we just show Google Trend in that sense, because we would like you to correlate things like vaccine with something. Every one of you would go for something which is in their own bubble, whatever bubble you have, but it's your horizon. And what is important is not just to find correlations, which obviously vaccine and COVID really works pretty well. And you can expand the time and go and visit different spaces. The important thing is how you share your search with somebody else. If you do that in class, Nicola, ask the students to do that with pizza and films, and in United States. And in 2018 and 2020, you would see the difference. And what's important is how they can really change their ideas with others. Bubble is being defined here, times simplicity, so that we can be nothing else. It's not that we can be nothing else, it's that we have to actively try to overpass the horizon and the fence. So it's part of what we need to do when we really learn and we really teach, because bias is in artificial intelligence already. And it's not just the 17 bias that everybody's using in the school. Is that in Wikipedia, you can find 108 digital cognitive biases, which are basically bubbles, personal and complex bubbles. One important thing is to know that in the school, we usually work with information because we are interested in literacies and how we learn. But we also focus on how we learn. And that idea of exchanging information and using the personalized sphere to really access another one and interact, it's part of what we want in class. We develop creative skills just by interacting, creating, and open our mind to somebody else's activities. That's part of what's the relational literacies. Marope put them connected to creative thinking. So that's important. PISA was going to be about creative thinking in 2020. They just had to change it immediately because of the pandemic situation. But it's important to see how they define that as something connected to science and human behavior. So it's read about the draft that PISA prepared, the OECD prepared for creative thinking, because really was organized about it. And the components of creativity have been studied in many ways. I like this one, which is Teresa Amabile, but we also have the influence that it had in specific methodologies. Stephen, we put you there. Sorry, we thought it was important, so we put you there. But or even others connected to multiple intelligences and interpersonal or intrapersonal spaces. So the idea that there is no enlarging of creativity farther from your own talent if you are not getting into the rest of society is part of what we wanted to do. Gamifying is part of the issue. We did that, we explained that, we talked about it yesterday, so we are not going to be further in that. But we'll just point out that every contribution, whatever handicapped person, whatever different person, whatever cultural excluded person is, needs to be in the picture. They need to join together because we need common narratives. We need common narratives from the personalized hybrid learning space into exchangeable and interpersonal relationships, because that's the way of integrating collective intelligence. And that's what we live as open discussion. How can creativity be part of the picture? And the questions are creativity is to solve these special items. How can we fix the problems in the world? 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or just 4 specific items, that's a discussion to finish. In fact, it is the final open question. We finish our presentation here. So it's just for you to identify them. Oops, I just wanted to.
That's okay.
It's okay.
You wanted
okay.
to go back?
I wanted to go and leave that open. This one.
All right.
How can we do it? So,
I'll have to start.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
It's just an open question. I wanted to leave the images of that one open. But in fact, it's just open to here. Thank you. I hope you still see it. It's just thinking about ethical research, but also economic development, or also climate change or educational issues that we still have to solve. Up to you. Open debate.
So do we have a minute or two, Daph, before we have to go, if anyone wants to add a final comment?
We have 2 minutes.
Okay.
Anybody have any questions or comments?
Thank you, Rika.
Stephen asked, actually, do we need to share experiences or just communication?
What? Feel free.
I
Thank
would.
you, Nicholas.
Well, I think that's a question aimed at us,
Yeah.
Neos. And I would say probably my feeling, and it's just a gut feeling. It's not scientific research or anything, is that, yeah, we need to share experiences.
Sure. Otherwise, it doesn't really match with our richness. We have an article about this specific topic. So if you search for creativity, Lorenzo Ray Gallen, it's
you might find it.
You might find it. I don't know which is the publisher actually.
It's Routledge, I think.
Routledge.
Yeah.
So go there. Deep suspicious of commonality. Yeah, it's a suspicious, but it's real. I had friends who said, I don't believe in mobile telephones. I said, yeah, well, it's true.
The thing is, we need to somehow find the right balance
Okay.
between individualism, individual liberty, and so on, and the needs of a community. And I think that we're very out of balance at the moment.
Yeah, in this moment, Stephen says that common experience doesn't exist. Yeah, it's true. If qualia exists, common experience doesn't. It's a shared experience, probably, something to say, to be living together in the sense of exchanging experiences. Yeah, true. Good. Thank you. It's been a pleasure and running too much, but I think we've got, well, an issue and it was fun. Thank you very much to everybody for being here.
Thank you, everyone, and hope you've enjoyed it.